Welcome to the Candid Savage. Another episode, nothing really. We decided to change it up. I'm not the one asking questions this time. Andy Moss, who I have on the other end here, has decided he's going to ask all the questions so that you guys get to know me, and he's probably going to roast me. But Andy, how's it going?
Hey Ashley, it's going well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on to roast me.
Well, you know, I feel there's a little payback due for some old history between the two of us. So,
Listen, just because I ripped apart your triceps on your first day with me doesn't mean you get to take advantage of this.
yeah, I don't really want to relive that story. So, you know, maybe
It's
we'll
an awesome story.
with the audience.
We could share that at some point in this podcast, I'm sure. So good.
So why don't we dive into it? You know, you've got a great new podcast coming out, and as you said, I thought it would be great for your audience to get to know you a little bit beyond sort of the shiny version that you put out in social land, and
the rough cut.
So
the rough cut and polished.
It's kind of a unique situation because you and I have known each other for about 6 years now. But obviously, you know, you've got 30 some years under your belt, and there's a lot that has gotten you to the point that you're at now. So, you know, I'm as curious as probably the audience is to find out a little bit more about that. You know, I know you as an accomplished athlete. I know you as a great personal trainer. I think one of the best in Canada that I've come across. I know you as a published author, which is pretty cool. Get Shit Done, which is a true Ashley title.
Damn right.
I know you now as a multiple location franchise owner with Anytime Fitness, which seems to be a great fit with you and their brand and the company. So that's really exciting. And you TV personality in the Ottawa region, and who knows where else in the months and years to come. So, I mean, that's a heck of a life story already, but I'm sure there's a backstory there.
A little bit of backstory. A little bit.
So, you know, maybe we'll go way back and see if there's anything we can find from your early days, and you know, maybe just introduce us to the 10-year-old Ashley. You know, where are you? Who are you at that time? Who's around you? You know, what's going on in your life at that time?
Man, when I was 10, I was fugly because I decided to cut all my hair off, and it like I said in one of my intros, it looked like I had a mullet. The glasses the size of my face, which I still till this day, when you look at photos of people in the 80s, I don't understand how that was a thing. Everyone's glasses are huge. I was a huge tomboy just because I loved sports, so I didn't really care what I looked like in terms of what I wore. I mean, I was going to school, sitting at a desk all day. I just wanted to play sports. So that's what I did as a kid. And, you know, sports helped me in a lot of ways, mainly because I didn't really completely fit in when I was in high school. I went to more of a preppy Catholic high school, and I was definitely not a preppy girl. I was definitely one of the tomboys. And so it was kind of hard to fit in. I mean, I got picked on enough. And so sports got me out of school really early. Also got me out of the house. And it just challenged me, whereas like school's a challenge, but I just hated it. I'm not a scholar, I guess you want to call it. So probably why I took auto and computers for 2 years. But yeah, I'm a hands-on person. I'm not meant for university. I'm not meant to dive in a book or any of that stuff. So yeah, when I was a kid, I was outside playing street hockey with the boys. Oh yeah, I remember that. It just came to me now. I had figure skates because my mom refused to buy me hockey skates. So Sassy Pants, being me, when we went to go get my figure skates sharpened at, it was Play It Again Sports in Orleans, and my mom left to go look at something in the Play It Again Sports, and I went on my tippy toes to peek over the counter and asked the guy sharpening my skates to shave the picks off. And he did. So when my mom got the skates back, she was like, "What the fuck happened to your skates?" And I'm like, "I asked him to shave the picks off like hockey skates." So needless to say, next Christmas, I got myself some Bauer Chargers. Those were my first hockey skates. And then my mom let me go play ice hockey with the boys with my new hockey skates.
Very
And
cool.
yeah, so that was me at 10.
Wow. So it's interesting because, as I understand it, one of your first sort of career jobs was in the government, which,
Yeah.
knowing you
Good
as I
times.
do now, is hard to even imagine. But you know, I'm not sure if you've ever seen the video, but there's a Steve Jobs video where he's talking to Stanford University graduates, I think, and he talks about the fact that as you're going forward through life, it's not always easy to figure out what the right steps are, and you listen to your intuition and actually follow it. That somehow later on in that journey you'll be able to turn around and all of a sudden all the dots will actually connect somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I've always wondered about that with you because the dots don't seem to all connect from the outside, but maybe from the inside they do. Like, have you given thought to what led that tomboy and that sort of out of place girl to government, and then to kind of a breakdown that led you out of government into what you're doing now?
I have no idea why I was such a big. I don't know. I think as a kid, I kind of didn't really give a shit about what I look like the other girls. I just didn't care because it wasn't a priority to me. Like I didn't care about having a shitload of friends. I didn't care about makeup. I didn't care about having long hair. I cared about playing sports, and that was pretty much my thing as a kid. I just loved sports, and any sport that was available, I would play. Now, mind you, soccer was my number one, hockey was my number two, and baseball. Um, but I don't know, like as a kid, and maybe like my sister Jessica is super active as well. Like she was a very good baseball player. My mom, back in her teens and early 20s, she was a really good baseball player. My dad's a great golfer, tennis player. Um, so maybe it just runs in my DNA. I don't know. But as a kid, I just wanted to have fun, and I didn't give a shit about what I look like. And then maybe that, like going through a little bit of the bullying in high school, as well as a more personal event between the ages of about I'll say 4 and 7, with a family member, uh, that built some tough skin for me, some thick skin, I should say. And I don't think, like, people ask me how I got to where I am now, and I honestly don't really know. It's it's like this. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know. So, I mean, when I graduated from college and then went and worked for the feds, I liked what I did because it was unique, and I would show up to work, and it usually wouldn't be the same thing every day. You're typically dealing with different shit all the time. Um, and then I went and took a desk job that I wanted to smash my face to the screen every day. Sitting at a desk is just not my thing. And life events, bullshit in the workplace. It took me 3 years to kind of snap,
Mm-hmm.
but not like go postal, but looking at life events that happened, I just asked myself, if I die tomorrow, would I have a lot of regrets? And the answer was yes. And when I asked myself that question a year later, I just thought about that. And so initially, when I thought about that, I knew I had to make a change because I was miserable and I was depressed and I had anxiety and I was just a walking angry individual. And so when I said yes to that, I started mapping kind of an exit strategy. But even then, I didn't even know what I was going to do. And it was this boiling point that I'm sure some listening probably have or have had. And I just said, fuck it. And I quit my job at 2 in the morning, went on a road trip, did not care. And I lost my pension, my benefits, everything. But to me, at that time, with my mental state, money meant nothing. I could care less about a pension. I could care less about the paycheck. I was at that point where I just didn't care. But I knew somehow, some way, I would get out of the corner. And that's kind of a beauty of being pushed into the corner, because the only way out is, well, straight ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You can't back up anymore. So, yeah, I don't know. It was just this feeling of relief, even though I knew I just lost everything, which is super weird. And then 2 months, I didn't work. I just did different things like YouTube, and then talked to people, trained people, because I was still doing some personal training on the side. And I was still mentally not good. I actually moved back into my parents' basement at the age of 27. But that was probably the best thing I ever did. At the time, I felt like a loser, because I'm like, I'm 27, I'm single, and I'm living at home in my parents' basement. This is bullshit. But now I look back at it. So that was when I was 27. I'm 33 right now. It was the best thing I ever did, because I had my parents' support. I had a space with no pressure that allowed me to think. I had a work environment that I felt like I had fun in, which was where I met you. And it got the juices flowing, and it got me thinking constantly. And I finally, I took the leap after, was it 8 months or 7 months, and went into the studio on my own. But it's honest, like for me, it's just I do things and I just know that it'll work out. If I put the time and energy into it, I know it'll work. And I mean, sometimes I do things where I'm like, well, that was fucking stupid. But I mean, you have to mess up to realize, okay, that's not the right way.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid to mess up. And I think that's just a key thing for a lot of people too, is don't be afraid for something not to work.
Yeah, it's interesting that the personality you had as a young person, not caring, what people thought of you and how you looked and all that, does seem to sort of still be part of your personality, in the sense that you're not
But
afraid to
amplified.
fail.
Well, and I think too, as a kid, because when I was in high school, I would come home crying a lot of the time, especially in like grade 7 and 8, because there was, I'm not going to say their names, but there was like at least 3 guys in my high school that it's like they made it their mission to make my life a living hell. And I would go home crying, or I would fake stomach aches or fake that I was sick so I didn't have to go to school again.
Yeah.
So I think that in my grade 7 and 8 and even 9, that's what I think developed the stop caring aspect, because if I knew that if I didn't care or didn't listen to what these people were doing or saying, it wouldn't affect me. Which has also led to, me calling people on their shit. And I still do that till this day, but it can also get me into trouble. So like when I worked in the government, I would call people on their shit. I did not give a rat's ass what position they filled. If something was not right, I would call them out on it. And unfortunately, sometimes it wouldn't go my way. But at the end of the day, I felt good because I was truthful, I was ethical, I was moral. And yeah, I don't know. I think I think it stems from high school or from my childhood, like you were saying earlier.
Well, it's interesting because in the field you're in now, health and wellness and helping people, get into a better place in their life in those areas, that brutal honesty is actually probably very, very helpful, even if maybe they don't like when they're receiving it. It's actually what they really need most of the time.
Yeah, and I'll tell, like, people that follow me know that I'm very blunt. I don't beat around the bush, and people need to hear it. Honestly, these days too many people are easily offended. Too many people want the easy answer. They want the easy way out. They want the magic pill. They want the perfect answer, but I refuse to do that because it's not the truth. And I won't cover anything up. I won't patch anything up. I'll be very honest. And sometimes the truth does hurt. Sometimes I know I can be a little bit too upfront or blunt, but I'd rather be blunt than sugarcoat something and, be wrong,
Sure.
or lead them astray, lead them in the wrong way.
Hmm. Well, I'm sure your audience is going to get an earful of that as they listen to your episodes. So I look forward to that. Um, I want to explore a little bit. You started off sort of in the fitness industry, as you mentioned, working in sort of one of the big box gyms. Um, then you went into a studio, a small studio, and did your own private stuff. And then you decided to take a big leap from there. What was the impetus for that? And was there somebody that influenced that, or came into your life to help make that happen?
Yeah, there was, well, one big one, and then another one. So when I was trying to like plan my exit, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I spoke with a local franchise owner of actually another gym, and he had been with the federal government before, and he took a leave with no pay to open up a gym, and I had probably annoyed the shit out of him with questions because I lived in the gym, and I'm like, man, I'm like, wouldn't it be awesome to have your own gym? So that kind of started the fire because it had already started me looking into opening up a franchise. And then fast forward probably like 3 years, when I was in the studio, I realized that after about 2 years of being in the studio, when I'm 50 years old, like I can't be personal training people. Like getting up at 5 in the morning, doing split days or even like long straight days, it's hard on the body. And as trainers, we're the worst because a lot of us don't practice what we preach because we're too busy taking care of other people. And I realize that and I recognize that when I'm 50, I'm not going to have a cushion. I'm not going to have a good retirement because I'm going to be training people all the time. So that's when I went back to my books and I'm like, okay, I looked into a franchise. Let's dive into it again. And during that time, I had met my business partner, Mike. And at that time, we were actually trading services. He was helping coach me with business, and then I was training him. He had just beat cancer, but a couple years prior to that. So he was looking at me for the holistic health and the training to make him stronger, and he was helping me with other stuff. And then being in his living room, I had showed him, I'm like, hey, what about this franchise? I think it'd be great, yada, yada. And so he gave me his advice. And then a week later, he comes back and he's like, hey, have you heard about this Anytime Fitness company? No. So I looked into it and, like, no offense to the other brand I looked at, but this brand trumped it.
Mm.
So I took a look at it. And then after a couple weeks, I said, like, I really want to see if I can go into this. So we looked into like SBLs and whatnot. And I mean, their performer that they showed didn't show, I'll just say it's not a true number.
Right.
And so when I looked at it, he looked at me and he goes, why don't we partner with it? You can avoid some like headaches where I can help you. But at the same time, I really want to get involved with the health industry because it's helped me with my cancer. And I was like, done. So that's how Mike and I became partners. And we ended up going in and getting 3 territories at one time. And yeah, so that's how that happened.
So you two hadn't known each other before that?
No, so well, yes and no. When we were in the studio, I met him because when I moved out of my parents' basement, so I gave myself a year and I did it exactly 1 year. I moved into a new condo that had been renovated and it was a shit show. It was horrible. So I complained to the company that did the renos. And then so they fired this company, this company that looks after rental properties and whatever. And they brought Mike in. I didn't know who Mike was from Hole in the Wall. Mike shows up at my door and he's like, hey, I'm here to see, well, the shit show. But he was wearing Ferrari zip up. And if anyone knows me, they know that I'm a huge Ferrari fan. And I have been since I was like 3, because I would play with cars instead of Barbies. And so he came back the second time with, and I noticed this Ferrari logo on his laptop bag. I was like, what the fuck is this guy? So I asked him, like, hey, are you like a big Ferrari fan? Like, what the fuck? And he's like, actually, so we start talking about Ferraris. I show him my memorabilia, and then he stayed in my living room for, I'm not even kidding, like 3.5 hours.
Cool.
We just shot the shit about everything. So that's how we met.
Wow.
And then he was with me as a personal training client for it'd be a year before we looked into Anytime Fitness. So we knew each other and built a good friendship for a year before we went into it. Because I mean, going into business, especially at that large of a capacity, you don't want to go in with just anybody.
Very cool. Obviously, he's had a big impact on your life in a lot of ways.
Yeah, he's, well, some know, some don't, but he passed away this spring. His cancer came back, and yeah, he passed away in April. So yeah, so he's been a big impact, but a big motivation, and probably a bigger motivation now that he's no longer here.
Yeah, and I mean, you're looking forward now. You've got a podcast, 2 gyms. Any plans for more?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You never.
I'm already looking at a few spots for a third one, but I love what I do. I don't want to stop just doing one thing, and that's, this podcast is just another thing that I've been wanting. Well, that I've been wanting to do for a long time, and it's been put on the back burner, and not anymore. So if I want to do something, I plan it and I just do it.
So with all the different areas that you're involved in, how do you sort of go about prioritizing sort of what the next projects are, and where, like with this podcast, when and where you're going to start allocating your time? Like, how do you go about that process so that your listeners can sort of think about it for themselves?
Well, when I was back working for the feds, I mean, my daytime hours were at the office. And then I was finding my evening hours till like 1, 2 in the morning was focused on building a personal training brand outside of my career, my office hours. And the funny thing with that is that I was never tired because I was so excited all the time. And so I carry that forward now. When I'm in my clubs 5 days a week, if not 6. And I have a schedule with a certain amount of hours in the day, so usually like 8, sometimes 10 hours in the clubs throughout the week. But it's the after hours is where I do my fun stuff, because my clubs are my priority. My employees and my members are my priority, and same with everyone else that's involved with Anytime Fitness. Like, the clubs are my number one priority. With my podcasting, and if I want to do a second book or different projects that I'm doing, I'm up, like, I get home at 9 o'clock at night, and from 9 o'clock until 1, sometimes 2 in the morning, I'm sitting in my home office just researching, trying things, talking to people, just researching as much as I can during the off time. And I mean, I still get 6-7 hours of sleep, but yeah, it's the off hours where everyone is either sleeping or watching Netflix. That's when I'm in my home office doing more stuff.
Right. So I can hear the Gary Vaynerchuk influence there, sort of the hustle, but also it's an interesting the way you frame that really you started building this sort of side hustle well before you were leaving your sort of safe 9-to-5 job. And in some ways, your side hustle now is your personal brand, where the business and the gyms is your day job, so to speak. Is that how you see things going in the future, or do you see, how do you see it evolving?
I still see my clubs. I mean, even if I build, say, 1, 2, or 3 more clubs, I'll always see my clubs being a priority, because I also have people who work there and people who help run my clubs and make them successful. So the people that are running my businesses or involved with the businesses, they'll always be a priority to me over my own brand. And that will always be like that, because I feel like I'm responsible for them and the clubs, and also the brand, making sure that the brand is well represented. At the same time, in terms of my personal brand, I do see it growing. I do see myself doing more things. And you know what? That might be, I take 2 more weeks off on the entire year to go do stuff instead of never. But at the end of the day, the clubs are always my priority. My personal brand I will grow, but it'll be this side hustle, and eventually, maybe down the line, it'll be like the full time hustle. But for the next 5 years, I know that the anytime clubs will be my full time
Yeah,
hustle kind of thing.
that's great. And it must be exciting being responsible for employees other than yourself. I know, certainly I've lived through that. It's a different responsibility when the gym's being full and the membership's being paid actually matters to other people's mortgage payments and you know kids
Well,
expenses.
it's a huge responsibility, and it also gives me a source of kind of like gratitude because these people enjoy going into the workplace. And like for one of my employees, he finally moved out on his own and has his own apartment for the first time in his life. And I love that because he was able to do it through working through
Mhm.
the clubs. Um, and I like seeing people grow. I like helping them achieve things, and it is a responsibility to me in that way that if they're not succeeding, I kind of take it a little bit personal because if they're not succeeding, what am I doing wrong? And so there's a big responsibility there, and also obviously their paychecks. So they want to make money, they want to pay their bills, put food on the table, but also the responsibility of my members to make sure that they're in a good place when they come work out. But I love it. I love being able to have people work for me and have an organization where people love coming in the door, whether it's to work or work out. And yeah, it's just, I'm very passionate about the fitness industry, in case you couldn't tell.
I could tell the triceps are still sore from that. So why don't we wrap up with just some quick response questions. I wasn't really sure what direction I wanted to take this, but I'm right in the middle of reading a book right
It's like my
now.
life, Andy.
What's that?
So it's like my
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
There's no specific
Well,
direction.
I wanted to sort of have a theme to it, and it just happens that I'm reading a book called Principles by a guy, Ray Dalio, who's one of the world's wealthiest investors. But he's a very sort of humble, practical guy, and he's decided to stop making money as his sort of core purpose and start sharing the principles through which he's led a successful life, and he's trying to encourage other people who've been successful to do the same. And uh, it's a very interesting book, and I thought it would actually frame these questions well because you're somebody that actually I've always been impressed by how sort of consistent you are. Um, the way you deal with things, the way you react to things, the way you were at work. Uh, there was always sort of a consistent um, aspect to it, and it led me to think that you have an approach to your life that works for you. It may not, work for everybody, but like, do you have principles by which you approach the challenges that life throws at you? I don't know if you want to cover them in different areas of your life, but like, how do you approach when a shitstorm comes at you? Um, how do you deal with that so that you're learning from it and dealing with it in a constructive way?
For me, I just remind myself just to calm the fuck down. Too many people get wound up when the shitstorm comes. They start overthinking, then they start driving themselves up the wall with anxiety. They start making up thoughts in their head of what could be. And that's not something I want to do. Now, a long time ago, that's something I would do. And I know that there's no benefit to that. So if there's a roadblock that comes in my way, I look at it, I judge it, I see which direction can I go? Can I hop it? Can I go around it? What can I learn from it? I sit back and I just digest it. I don't react. And when I do react, it's because I've thought about it, educated myself about it, and feel that I'm able to move now with that. If you react like someone who's batshit crazy over the smallest things or even the biggest things, your end result's probably not going to be the best. It's probably not going to be what you want it to be because your emotions take over. I'd really try to not let emotions take over my thought, and I try not to get wound up. And if I have to take a day or two to react to the situation, I'll take the time to think about it and then react instead of just reacting based on emotion or hype.
Oh, very cool. So that, I mean, that's sort of the truest definition of mindfulness, that I've heard. It's just being able to sit with something and detach from it and let time pass.
Well, you have to, because I mean, if you let that situation overwhelm you, you're not going to sleep, you're not going to eat, you're going to drive yourself crazy, you're probably going to drive everyone around you crazy, and you're probably going to make a bad decision. So you're better off, in my opinion, just kind of looking at the situation. And also, the other thing I didn't mention is finding a positive out of the shitty situation. It's not always bad, even though you look at the situation as it being negative. There's always that hidden positive. So if you take that time to really look at it, you'll figure it out. But it's just the patience, and that's what people these days do not have, or they get easily offended.
Right.
Whatever. But
I think
just
even
the
that
patience.
process that you talked about of sitting with it and sort of detaching and analyzing it also, I'm imagining, helps you recognize what's actually going on, so that if something similar happens in the future, you're like, oh shit, I've seen that before, I know what to do, as opposed to it being an
Hmm.
emotional response.
Yeah, and like for me, I mean, I've gone through a lot of really shitty situations, and it's a learning lesson. And people think, oh, that's really cliche. Use it as a learning lesson,
Mm-hmm.
but no, really, use it as a learning lesson, because similar situations, like you just said, will pop up in the future. So understand how to deal with it now, so that when it comes over again, which it probably will, you have a better way
Yeah.
to react to it.
Yeah, Ray talks about it, that life is like a big puzzle, and so you find one shape and you figure out how to deal with it and where it goes, and then when you see other ones that look similar, you're going to know where those go too. And it's a good analogy for
Mm-hmm.
for how to approach these things as they come at us. um, all right, just maybe give the audience a couple of last minute value bombs here. Maybe an author or a podcast or somebody that's really helped shape the way you're approaching your life or your business or your health and wellness, whatever it might be. Give us a couple of people that have really inspired you.
I think in terms of business, I mean, there's people on social media like, if you haven't heard of him, Gary Vaynerchuk. And Andy, you're the one who introduced me to him 2 years ago. So thank you for that. But Gary Vaynerchuk, if you guys don't know who he is the CEO of VaynerMedia, and he puts out a lot of content. He doesn't ask for anything. He just gives you a lot of valuable content. He kicks you in the ass, whether it's on Snapchat, his Instagram, his Facebook, or on his, like, whatever he has. But the thing with him is that he's very real, so I connect with him in that way, and I don't get offended with anything that he says. And I mean, some of the stuff doesn't pertain to me, but a lot of the stuff does. And he talks about the hustle, and he does talk about how if you have a 9 to 5, that you do your side hustle at night. And that was something I was doing before I knew who he was. And so I I think a lot like him. Obviously, I don't have huge company like he does, but I understand where he's coming from, and he's given me a lot of valuable information. So book Crush It, I bought that. I think it was about a year and a half ago. I bought his book Crush It, and it's not dated. I mean, it was written in what, 2004,
Maybe eight, maybe a
2008?
little
Was it
later than that
2008?
actually.
Okay, but either way, I mean, like, it was, well, say 10 years old, 9 years old, but it's still relevant till this day. You can still use a lot of the content in there. His Jab, 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 Right Hook book, which is great for understanding social media platforms, which has been great for me to understand how to use all of them, because there's so many out there that you get easily confused. Um, so his stuff I really appreciate, and I watch probably every Gary video every day. Like every new one, I'm on the elliptical or the treadmill, and you'll see a Gary video popping up of one that I haven't seen yet. But yeah, so he's a big one. And then like in my life, as corny as it sounds, probably my parents. They're a big influence for me and a pusher. Um, who else is another good one out there? I mean, I have a shitload of books next to my bed, and I'm not gonna lie, names not good with names. Faces, great with faces. Andy Frisella, which I mean, some people like him, some people don't. He's the owner of a CEO of First Form down in the States, which is a supplement company. But I mean, his stuff is very like gritty, no bullshit, very in your face, and it's not for everyone. But a lot of the stuff he does say or says is really relevant to a lot of people, except I can see a shitload of people getting super offended by the way he comes across. But if you actually take what he says and you put it in action, like he makes a shitload of sense. So I'm a big fan of his stuff as well. Um, oh, there's a
How about in the
new.
health and
Wait, let
wellness
me pull him up.
industry? I mean, obviously it's part of your job and your life and your business. How are you, like, how do you sift through all of the crap that's out there and all the information?
There's
Yeah.
so much shit. Shitting on my own industry here. Um, and you use the good word sifting, and like I'll be honest, there's a lot of shit in our fitness industry. There's a lot of garbage info, garbage products. Um, I'm very picky who I follow in the fitness industry, and like Mobility Wad. If you guys have ever followed Mobility Wad with Dr. Kelly Starrett, he's more of like a CrossFit guy, but he's a doctor in
Mm-hmm.
physiotherapy. But his stuff is great, really knowledgeable. Love his stuff. Charles Poliquin, I look at a lot of his training techniques that he uses. He's a good one. Di Manuel, who's on this podcast, he's actually been a big influence for me because I met him, I'm going to say about 3 years ago now at Camp It Pro. We had a pro trainer meeting and they brought him in to speak to us. And it was so weird. The whole room, like, we just kind of kept looking at each other. And I'm a big believer that everything kind of happens for a reason. And since that day, he has given me a lot of tools. And I've put those tools to task and they've worked fantastic. And so Di actually is a big has been a big help for me the last 3 years. So Di Manuel. So if you're listening to this, haven't listened to the podcast with him yet, you should. Gosh, who else? Obviously, my business partner that passed away, Mike. He was a big one. And yeah, myself. Just always up in the bar on myself.
Well, and I think that's probably, if there's a secret to your success so far in your young life, it is that you seem to have a healthy way of not settling, right? I don't think that you're necessarily hard on yourself, but you just hold yourself to a high accountability, and you push yourself without needing anybody else to do it for you, which, as you know full well in the work that you do, there's a lot of people waiting for somebody else to motivate them. Doesn't tend to work too
Mm-hmm.
well.
No, you
No.
can't ask for permission. You can't wait for people to help you because you're going to end up sitting there staring at
Mm-hmm.
the fucking wall the whole time. So ultimately, your path is created by yourself. So you can sit and stew in your bullshit or in your own thoughts, or you can get up and you can start moving forward. And it's not easy. I'm not painting this picture that, and like and being an entrepreneur, a lot of people on social media paint this false facade of what being a business owner is, and it's filled with glamour. But if you're starting out as an entrepreneur, there is no glamour. There's nothing. It's hard work. You don't make a lot of money. You're putting your blood, sweat, and tears into something in hopes that in 5, 10 years you start making money. And that's what scares a lot of people. And I see people in the fitness industry coming into it in 3 months, they're gone. And they're in a bullshit job that they hate because they weren't able to succeed on their own as a fitness coach. And it's unfortunate. And the other unfortunate thing is there's also not a lot of help, which is why I take the time to sit down with people and help coach them, which is why I was a pro trainer for 5 years with CanFit Pro. And I just love helping people. It was more of a hobby teaching than anything, but you have to continue pushing forward. You have to ask for help. You can't expect to do or know all the answers yourself. Like, you have to ask for help. And I have no shame. Like, if I need help, I'm gonna ask for help. But it's just, you always have to truck forward, and being an entrepreneur is not easy. But at the end of the day, if you want to succeed, you got to push forward.
Great. All right. Well, so the podcast launches, I believe it's December 1st. So that's coming up
Yep.
soon from when we're recording this.
It's like
2 days
what,
from
2
now.
days?
And where are people going to be able to find it? Do you have a website, anything like that?
So if you're listening to this, you're probably on thecandidsavage.com, which is my podcast. And right now, after we hang up on each other, I'll be working on getting this thing on iTunes. Got rejected the other day because I didn't click the explicit button.
That's inevitable with you.
Yeah, so I got rejected. So that means tonight I'll be working on that again. So I hope to have this both on the Podbean website, so thecandidsavage.com, where people can download the app, the Podbean app, so they can listen and subscribe there, and then on to iTunes, which I'm hoping that's where some of you listen to on iTunes, to have it on there, and then eventually on some other platforms as well.
And in terms of your brand, your personal brand, and in your gyms, where can people sort of get links to find all that? Yeah.
Find me? Well, they could go to my website, ashleymathieu.com. That's a good one. From there, you'll also find me on Facebook. You'll find me on Instagram. You'll find me on Twitter. You'll find me on Snapchat. Kind of find me everywhere. And then on my website, I also have my personal email on there too as well.
All right. Well, I think that was a pretty good intro to a little bit behind the scenes of Ashley Mathieu. And I look forward to listening to the podcast and exploring all the great guests you're going to bring on, and your angle on what they have to say. So thanks for doing this, and best of luck with the podcast. And I can't wait to watch the next 10, 20 years of your journey.
It'll be well, I want to say thanks for offering to interview me on my own podcast. I thought that was a great idea. I'm hoping that everyone listening likes it. And hey, if they want to roast me, I thought you were going to do a lot worse. I thought you were just going to roast the shit out of me, to be honest with you. I was ready for it. But you were really gentle, so that's good. But we can always do a second one. But no, thanks for doing this, and thanks for all the positive words and feedback. And I'm not sorry that I ruined your triceps on our first day.
Great. All right. Well, take care, and we'll catch up soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. And for all of you listening, please subscribe and comment on the podcasts. Share it with people who you think need a kick in the ass. We're over and out. Until next time, thanks for listening.